Welcome to Crossroads. President Donald Trump issued a happy Thanksgiving, but then said this is against mass migration. And he says the kindness of Americans has been exploited by people coming from other countries, and it's no longer going to be taking place. He has some plans for this. Also, Trump announced he's declaring every single order and document signed by the Autopen under former President Joe Biden to be null and void. All of them, basically. And meanwhile, do you remember the fact checkers who were telling us what's true and false? Well, it turned out the previous administration even had agents who were communicating with platforms on content to censor because they were calling it disinformation. Well, the Trump administration has actually rolled out its own way to handle what they call disinformation. And basically, they're cutting out the middleman and just making their own webpage to expose fake news themselves. We'll be talking about these topics and a lot more today. So remember, hit the like button, leave a comment. Let's get started. First off, the United States is ending all migration from third world countries, at least according to Trump. President Donald Trump issued an announcement on Thanksgiving against mass migration. He said the kindness of Americans has been exploited by people from other countries who are draining the United States, bringing in crime, drugs, making it less safe, and he's not going to allow it anymore, he says. This is Trump on Thanksgiving, by the way. He says this: "A very happy Thanksgiving salutation to all of our great American citizens and patriots who have been so nice in allowing our country to be divided, disruptive, carved up, murdered, beaten, mugged, and laughed at, along with certain other foolish countries throughout the world for being, quote, politically correct and just plain stupid when it comes to immigration." And by the way, actually, this is true. A lot of countries do laugh at the United States. The Chinese Communist Party, they even have a word, notably for people in the United States who, through kindness, basically allow their country to be destroyed. They joke about it. It's a meme in their countries, and they're aware of it. But Trump continues stating this. He says the official United States foreign population stands at 53 million people, according to the census, most of which are on welfare from failed nations or from prisons, mental institutions, gangs, or drug cartels. It's important to note here, when Trump is talking about the foreign population, he's not talking about just illegal immigrants. When Trump says foreign population, according to the census, 53 million people at least known, he's actually talking about legal and illegal, which is one of the reasons this is so significant. What Trump is discussing here is not just a policy against illegal immigration. He's talking about a policy against some forms of even legal immigration. And he's making a case saying that, people migrate here, they visit here, and they become a drain on the country. That, basically through the goodness of Americans, we're letting them all in, but they're making the quality of life here worse for the people of this nation. Trump says this: "They and their children are supported through massive payments from patriotic American citizens who, because of their beautiful hearts, do not want to openly complain or cause trouble in any way, shape, or form." Which is true, by the way, with a lot of Americans. We generally have an open door to, legal migration. Despite the criticisms against Americans, we have, I think, the most open legal migration policy in the entire world, and have for a very long time. And of course, a lot of migrants, while oftentimes the first generation might have a few hardworking people, typically second generation, according to even studies actually, basically has the same type of welfare pattern as the country they come from. And this has been a problem with the United States for a long time. But Trump says this: "The American people," he says, "they put up with what has happened to our country, but it's eating them alive to do so." He says a migrant earning $30,000 with a green card, which would be a U.S. permanent resident, by the way, with a green card will get roughly $50,000 in yearly benefits for their family, which happens a lot with some countries. Oftentimes what will happen, there are some cultures, for example, where the religion makes it so women are not allowed to work. What happens? They can make a religious argument. This woman is not allowed to work. Therefore, the government needs to pay her welfare. They have, 5, 6 kids. Every kid then goes on a form of welfare. And so even if the man in the family is earning maybe $30,000 a year, the family, through extension, will get roughly $50,000 a year in benefits, according to Trump at least here. Trump says the real migrant population is much higher, suggesting that 53 million is a low estimate, which means, of course, I don't know if he's talking about the kids here, because you got to think 53 million people in the country, we're like 400,000 or 400 million population. If you understand that, it means roughly a tenth of our population maybe is migrants. If you understand that that's part of it, not to mention kids, it could be anywhere. A quarter of the population would be migrant or second generation, which is a pretty big portion. But we don't actually even know because it's not really counted. Trump says this refugee burden, and this is important. Trump's talking not about illegal immigration. He's talking about refugees in this case. He says this refugee burden is the leading cause of social dysfunction in America, something that did not exist after World War II, failed schools, high crime, urban decay, overcrowded hospitals, housing shortages, and large deficits, etc. He says, as an example, hundreds of thousands of refugees from Somalia, which he's been all over the Somalians lately for some reason. Trump says, these refugees from Somalia are completely taking over the once great state of Minnesota. By the way, they've been exposed to have been basically ripping off through fraud the welfare system to a tune of about $2 billion, known. Trump says Somalian gangs are roving the streets looking for prey as our wonderful people stay locked in their apartments and houses, hoping against hope that they'll be left alone. The seriously retarded governor of Minnesota. This is Trump's words, not mine, okay? This is Trump's words, not mine. But Trump says the seriously retarded governor of Minnesota, Tim Walz, does nothing. Remember, he was the running mate of Kamala Harris, right? Does nothing either through fear, incompetence, or both, while the worst congressman/woman in our country, Ilhan Omar, this is Trump saying it again, always wrapped in her swaddling hijab, and who probably came into the USA illegally, and that you are not allowed to marry your brother, does nothing but hatefully complain about our country, its constitution, and how badly she is treated when her place of origin is a decadent, backward, and crime-ridden nation, which is essentially not even a country for lack of government, military, police, schools, etc. She's from Somalia, of course. There are allegations that she committed immigration fraud to bring her brother into the country by allegedly marrying him. There is documentation supporting this. It's not completely proven, but Trump is noting the documentation and just saying that he thinks that it's the case. It's a pretty bold statement to make, because while you could say that there is some supporting evidence, it's not like it's been looked at in court. And if it was, she could actually have her migration status revoked and be deported, which is a pretty big deal for Trump to be saying this. He adds, though, even as we have progressed technologically, immigration policy has eroded those gains and living conditions for many. He's suggesting that America is basically a giant welfare state, and we've been supporting the third world by allowing them to rob us, take advantage of us, bring their crime and problems here, and effectively lower the quality of life for all Americans. Now, is that the case? I can say, as somebody who grew up in the 80s and 90s, I barely recognize my country. I feel like a foreigner in my own country, and I can see it, frankly. It is the unfortunate condition, actually, that, again, I know plenty of migrants, and I know plenty who are on welfare. And I know a lot of Americans who struggle to get by because of competition for houses, causing huge rises in, again, difficulty finding affordable housing. The problem, of course, of jobs being scooped up, whether it's the low-income jobs, like the McDonald's and restaurant jobs being scooped up by illegals, whether it's the mid-tier jobs, the blue-collar jobs, construction, truck driving being scooped up by H-1B visas or illegals, or the white-collar jobs being scooped up by, again, mostly legal migrants. But again, the American people are being left with very little. And that is unfortunately the case. It's very hard to get by in this country now. But Trump adds, quote, "I will permanently pause migration. I will permanently pause migration from all third world countries to allow the U.S. system to fully recover, terminate all of the millions of Biden illegal admissions, including those signed by Sleepy Joe Biden's Autopen, and remove anyone who is not a net asset to the United States or is incapable of loving our country, end all federal benefits and subsidies to non-citizens of our country, denaturalize migrants who undermine domestic tranquility, and deport any foreign national who is a public charge, security risk, or non-compatible with Western civilization." The significance of this statement is incredible, by the way. Trump is talking not even just about deporting illegal immigrants here. What Trump is saying is he is going to be looking at every single migrant, every single visa holder, every single person who has even been naturalized and gotten American citizen who is not U.S. born. He's going to be looking at all of them, and he's going to be saying, have you been getting welfare? If you have, you might get deported. Are you a net asset to this country? Are you compatible with Western civilization? Have you been living here for 20 years and you never learned English? You might get deported. Are you somebody who loves this country? If you've been stating online, if you've been writing on the internet that America is a failed state, you hate it, you love your own country, you're waving your old country's flag, you might get deported. If Trump is, for example, saying that he's going to end all migration from third world countries, remember what qualifies as a developing country, right? That's most of Latin America, that's most of Africa, that's a lot of Asia. That is even technically China. The United States actually still legally regards China as a developing country. They get benefits from it actually, but they're still legally regarded as a developing country. This would limit migration basically to only first world countries. You know, Canada, Western Europe, you know, Japan technically, South Korea, Australia, and not a whole lot of others. There are not a lot of countries in the world that are regarded as first world countries. Most of the Middle East would not fall under this, by the way. And if he says also people who are not compatible with Western civilization, how do you define Western civilization? It would even mean that people who talk about jihad, people who talk about the evil America, people who criticize, you know, they've even talked about like criticizing Israel as being a possible thing with this, especially with Muslim countries. You could see a lot of people get deported. You could see a lot of people lose their visas. I don't know about denaturalizing people. That's not really something we typically see. Typically, if you're going to denaturalize somebody, they have to be a convicted criminal. Like they have to actually be convicted of a crime, and usually a major one because that's a huge step. They might even do that. Trump is talking about a huge, we'll see if it's even legal, but something we've never seen before, shift in the way that the United States views and handles migration. You might see people who've been here for a very long time get deported. And again, the big question is if, because Trump's been saying he's going to deport all the illegals and he hasn't done that yet either. He doesn't have a lot of time to be doing something this major. And if he's talking about 53 million people they're going to be reviewing, that is a lot. On the side of this, though, I am aware that some of these policies have already been implemented. I know a lot of people from other countries. I have a lot of friends from other countries. I am aware that even people who've applied for amnesty, even people who are here on like visas, they all have to reapply through a much more rigid standard now. All of them are now being made to reapply. I know a lot of people who fled, persecution and so on from especially China. They're all having to reapply right now. And this could, I don't know what it's going to mean deporting some people, because personally, I do know a lot of people who, if they're deported, they risk being jailed or killed. especially by the Chinese Communist Party. So I don't know how they're going to be looking at this, but all of them are now having to reapply. Something big is going on, and basically Trump is making it clear that they're going to be reviewing basically every single person who is not born in this country. Trump adds, though, quote, "These goals will be pursued with the aim of achieving a major reduction in illegal and disruptive populations." Remember, he's not just saying illegal, but also disruptive, including those admitted through an unauthorized and illegal Autopen approval process, meaning temporary protection status and so on. Trump adds that only reverse migration can fully cure this situation. Other than that, happy Thanksgiving to all, except those that hate, steal, murder, and destroy everything that America stands for. You won't be here for long. That is, the weight of this cannot be understated. This is massive. With the big if Trump actually does it, because as we've seen, it's very difficult for him to do things because there's going to be a lot of legal challenges to this, put it that way. Now, on this point, though, the federal government right now is already moving to, at the very least, cut funding to illegal immigrants. Anybody who has been getting welfare or any kind of benefit, they're risking losing it right now. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent wrote this. He said, at President Donald Trump's direction, we are working to cut off federal benefits to illegal aliens and preserve them for U.S. citizens. He says U.S. Treasury announced it will issue proposed regulations clarifying the refunded portions of certain individual income tax benefits are no longer available to illegal and other non-qualified aliens. This is not just illegal aliens, but even legal ones. He says covering the Earned Income Tax Credit, the Additional Child Tax Credit, the American Opportunity Tax Credit, and the Savers Match Credit. On that point, a lot of illegal immigrants get benefits through their families and children. In some states where they don't even check migration status, you have a lot of illegal immigrants on welfare and getting other forms of benefits, free schooling, free health care, food stamps, you name it. It is a massive issue. And some people would say, well, look, illegal immigrants cannot legally get that. They get it because some states don't ask migration status. And so they're able to bypass the law because of that, which they're trying to overturn right now by allowing sharing of data between agencies. Now, Trump also responded to a reporter asking why he's blaming Biden for some of this. One of the big issues that triggered this, an Afghan national, a migrant, shot and killed a National Guardsman, severely injured another. And Trump commented on this, blaming Biden. And here's what he said. Watch this.
Your DOJ IG just reported this year that there was thorough vetting by DHS and by the FBI of these Afghans who were brought into the U.S. So why do you blame the Biden administration?
Because they let them in. Are you stupid? Are you a stupid person? Because they came on a plane along with thousands of other people that shouldn't be here, and you're just asking questions because you're a stupid person. And there's a law passed that it's almost impossible not to get them out. You can't get them out once they come in. And they came in, and they were unvetted, they were unchecked, there were many of them, and they came in on big planes, and it was disgraceful. And if you look, you'll see there was a law passed. It makes it almost impossible not to let them in, not to certify them, so to speak, once they come in. And they came in, and they shouldn't have come in. And frankly, the whole thing was a mess. The whole Afghanistan situation was a mess. It should have never taken place. If we're going to go out, and we would have gone out because I had everybody ready to go. We were going to go out with strength and dignity and precision. And we would have left from Bagram, and we would have kept Bagram, by the way, because of its very close relationship to China and where they make their missiles. But when you let the people come in by the thousands and thousands and thousands, they made a terrible mistake. But they were incompetent, yeah.
Now, look, back to the point of reverse migration. Can Trump strip people of their citizenship, basically? Could he denaturalize people? That would be hard to do. Could he actually deport people who are refugees? You're fleeing persecution. Maybe. Will he go after people on H-1B visas, student visas, and otherwise? He's saying he's going to. And will he actually try to deport basically every single illegal immigrant, and then also stop migration from every third world country, which is frankly the majority of the world basically would fall under that. Well, the White House released a statement clarifying the law that would give the president the ability to do what Trump is now saying he's going to do. This is the White House, and this is the law they said they're going to use. Immigration and National Security Act, Section 212F. Quote, whenever the president finds that the entry of any aliens, and remember, alien is not just illegal alien. Alien means just non-citizen, right? Any aliens or of any class of aliens into the United States would be detrimental to the interests of the United States. He may, by proclamation and by such period as he shall deem necessary, suspend the entry of all aliens or any class of aliens as immigrants or non-immigrants, or impose on the entry of aliens any restrictions he may deem to be appropriate. Meaning, Trump has the legal ability to block the entry of any country of origin, of any social status, of any basic, people he doesn't want. There is a legal basis to do this. And, this is a little different from like deporting people or denaturalizing people. But this is a power President Trump could do merely by just proclaiming it. He could make a proclamation and ban migration from, half the world if he wants, and he might do it. He's saying he's going to do it. Also importantly, they're already now doing this at least with people from Afghanistan, because again, you have this Afghan migrant who fought alongside U.S. troops. He was with CIA detachments. This was a big problem, of course, with Afghanistan. You had a lot of guys with the ANA, the Afghan National Army, fighting alongside American troops, fighting against the Taliban. The Americans tried very hard to get those guys out because a lot of them fought alongside them. They came here to the United States. A lot of them are probably good. Some of them are not. And one of them went on a shooting spree shouting Allah Akbar and murdered a young woman who was in the National Guard and severely injured another, and Trump's saying no more of this. They also just thwarted a big bomb plot by another Afghan migrant. And so they're now saying they're going to ban and possibly ban migration from Afghans and probably deport a lot of them. Secretary of State Marco Rubio said this: President Trump's State Department has paused visa issuance for all individuals traveling on Afghan passports. Not even migration, but even just visiting. He says the United States has no higher priority than protecting our nation and our people. This is from the Department of State, also, from their tweet. It says the Department of State has immediately paused visa issuance for individuals traveling on Afghan passports. The department is taking all necessary steps to protect U.S. national security and public safety. In other words, they're terrorist threats, as we've seen, which is why we were fighting a war there in the first place, right? But back to Trump's broader statements on ending migration from third world countries basically as a whole, which, literally that's what he said. Stephen Miller, White House Deputy Chief of Staff for Policy and Homeland Security, he also clarified some of the thinking behind that statement. And here's what he said, right? This is him. And he's saying this, quote, "This is the great lie of mass migration. You are not just importing individuals, you are importing societies." And that's an important point, right? He's suggesting that a country and the quality of a country is not just some kind of magic, soil type thing, right? It's not like a person goes to a country that's rich in oil and minerals, like Venezuela, for example, or Uganda, for example, with all the wonderful resources they have. It's not like people just go to these countries and magically wealth spurts out of the ground. It is the culture, the character of the people, the religion of the people that establishes, the society. And the quality of that society is basically a product of the people themselves. People create their societies. A good neighborhood or a bad neighborhood is formed by the people within it. High crime, low crime is determined by the culture and the values. Success, failure, decided by the culture and the values. It's not some magic formula. It is the people, and again, the nature of those people, who determine the success or failure of a nation. And he's suggesting that if you were to import people into the United States, or any country for that matter, from a failed state, from a country that's backwards, from a third world country, they will not magically become successful. Maybe the first generation, but their culture will come with them. Their way of life will come with them. Their religion will come with them. And the society that those create will be what they create when they come. He adds, quote, "No magic transformation occurs when failed states cross borders. At scale," he says, "migrants and their descendants recreate the conditions and terrors of their broken homelands." And this is an important point also with migration. There's a difference of migration where you're essentially just bringing your failed state to another country versus integrating and conforming to the society you enter. If you migrate to a country, typically, if you're respectful, you will learn the language, you will learn the culture, you will learn the manners, and you will conform to the society. If you fail to conform to the society, you are going to create the country you left within the country you moved to. And this is something, of course, where you have non-integrating populations. When you bring in just a few people, they typically integrate. You see this a lot with second-generation migrants. They go to American schools. You know, the parents are like, this kid's more American than whatever country I come from. And the parents typically view the kid as like an American, not as being part of like, the motherland or home country, right? You see that sometimes. Meaning they actually do conform to the society. They actually become part of the society. The problem we have with some cultures is that they don't do that. They demonize the country, they demonize the culture, they hate it, they move here and they despise it. And the kids grow up radicalized against it. They go to college, they spread it, they make protests and so on, and they hate the United States. You find that with some populations. The other side you see is when you bring in too many people at once. When you bring in massive migrant populations, effectively what they do is they build, basically communities that are entirely within their own culture here. They don't integrate whatsoever. They don't learn the language whatsoever. They don't conform whatsoever. They don't learn the manners whatsoever, and they basically build their own country within the United States and don't integrate. And what happens then is you have generational people who maybe 2 generations down the line don't even view themselves as Americans. They view themselves as being part of the country their parents or grandparents were from, and they never integrate. They never learn to love this country. And what happens over time is if they become the broader population, they then begin electing officials, voting for people who align with their different culture, values, and systems. And through that, they begin to actually transform the laws, the policies, the character of the United States, meaning we begin to lose our country. And so that's what he's talking about here, basically. Now, on this front, though, the United Nations came out with its own statement, and the UN said this. It says, "Seeking asylum is a fundamental human right for people fleeing violence, persecution, war, or disaster. Everyone has the right to seek asylum. Refugees works around the world to support those forced to flee." Now, look, I can understand both sides. On one side, I would say there are a lot of legitimate refugees. I know a lot of them. I know people who, if tomorrow, because they're refugees, if they were deported, they would be tortured and killed. I know a lot of them. I know a lot of people who fled persecution. I know a lot of people like that, and they absolutely love the United States. They love this country because they recognize what we have. I know a lot of people like this. The problem we have with the refugee status, though, is because America has such an open refugee policy. Basically, there are certain things you say, and it's just code words. you come to the border and basically if you just say, I'm applying for refugee status, I fear for my safety, I fear for my life. If I get deported, I'll be killed. You basically are put into this process where you can be there for 10, 20 years, maybe never, because again, the system is so gummed up because so many people are applying for it. And so when you had mass migration throughout Latin America and other countries, a lot of them were gaming that system. You had these NGOs, non-governmental organizations, working through the United Nations. Again, when I was in Panama investigating this is one thing that I uncovered and reported on. They give them pamphlets, they advise them, they tell them what to say. And so while hypothetically speaking, you might have like 1 million people legitimately who are, fleeing violence and might be murdered if they go back to their countries, you might have another 9 million or 20 million for that matter, who are basically just lying to defraud the system. And so legitimate cases get mixed in with illegitimate cases. It's a very difficult situation. And so we'll have to see how the US government does this. Again, right now, they are reevaluating all applications to see whether people are legitimately fleeing violence, whether they're actual refugees, or if they're just lying to take advantage of the American people. Now, look, also on this point, though, Trump announced that he is declaring all orders and documents signed by the Autopen under former President Joe Biden to be null and void. Keep in mind, this could include all the temporary protection status, every single executive order, basically just about everything done by Biden. Null and void. Even things that might have been passed by Congress and he signed into law, if it was done by Autopen. I'll be talking more about this after we come back from a quick break.
All right, just to pause here for a super quick moment. You are, of course, watching Crossroads with Joshua Philipp. I'm just here to share a message about American Hartford Gold, my own personal gold and silver bullion dealer. Now, obviously, the recent tariffs have made the markets super turbulent and volatile. With every new piece of tariff news, the markets seem to either crash up or crash down. And of course, it's worth mentioning that these conditions don't only affect Wall Street. They affect all of us through our investments and our retirement accounts. That's why I'd like to introduce you to a company that I trust and I myself use to secure my own savings, American Hartford Gold. They specialize in helping Americans move our assets into something tangible, into something you can actually hold, which is physical gold and physical silver, two precious metals that act as a hedge against all those decisions being made in Washington, D.C. They have an A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau. They have thousands of 5-star reviews, and they make the whole buying process super simple. Your metals can be shipped directly to your door, or you can transfer your current retirement account to a tax-advantaged gold IRA. And the best part is that right now, American Hartford Gold is offering an exclusive offer. When you call them today and you mention the name Joshua, you could receive up to $15,000 in free silver with your initial investment. Take advantage of their special offer. You can either just call them at 877-260-2764 or text Joshua to 65532. All their information will also be down in the description box below. And now, back to Crossroads.
Welcome back. President Donald Trump announced he is declaring all orders and documents, all of them, whether it was through Congress and it was signed by Joe Biden, whether it was an executive order or proclamation, whether it was a pardon, anything signed by the Autopen under former President Joe Biden is now being declared null and void. And Trump says that if Biden tries challenging it or something, he's going to hold Biden on perjury, which, the president can't technically do that, but he's suggesting maybe the Department of Justice will, which is kind of a politicization of the justice system. This is what Trump is saying. This is Trump on Truth Social. He says, quote, any document signed by sleepy Joe Biden with the Autopen, which was approximately 92% of them, meaning almost everything done under the entire Biden administration, is hereby terminated and of no further force or effect, meaning you don't have to follow it if it was done by Autopen. Trump says, quote, the Autopen, which was like a device that can automatically sign a name, and they know who was operating under Biden, they allege that Biden was communicating with them. That's being contested. It says the Autopen is not allowed to be used if approval is not specifically given by the President of the United States. The radical left lunatics circling Biden around the beautiful resolute desk in the Oval Office took the presidency away from him. I am hereby canceling all executive orders and anything else that was not directly signed by crooked Joe Biden, because the people who operated the Autopen did so illegally. Joe Biden was not involved in the Autopen process, and if he says he was, he will be brought up on charges of perjury. Thank you for your attention to this matter. Why does this matter so much? Okay, look. Under the law, if the president authorizes the signing of something with like an Autopen, it is debatably legal. Like it might be okay. I think you could probably still challenge it a bit, but more likely it would be deemed legal. Trump is saying every single thing that was signed with the Autopen, whether Biden approved it or not, is now null and void. And if Biden tries saying, wait a minute, I authorized that one. Wait a minute, I said they could sign that one. If Biden so much as says that, Trump is saying that he will be brought up on charges of perjury, suggesting that somebody was committing perjury by signing Biden's name and illegally. He kind of has him by the throat on this, because while they could argue that some documents were probably signed legally using the Autopen, a lot of them were not, and the ones that were not signed legally would very likely qualify as being, again, perjury. So he's using the threat of perjury to delegitimize both the legal and the illegal ones. That's why that matters so much. Now, here's some more details on this. New York Post said this. The president already has repealed many of Biden's executive orders and suggested that many of his pardons are invalid, though Biden told the New York Times in an interview this year he authorized the use of his name for controversial last-minute pardons. Auto-penned signatures carry full legal force so long as aides were operating under the directive of the president and have been used by chief executives for decades, including for everything from routine proclamations and constituent letters to, in rare cases, actual legislation. Again, suggesting the point, technically, Biden could argue that some documents were in fact legally signed, even if done by Autopen. And Trump is basically saying some were and some weren't, but if you try to challenge the ones that were, we're going to charge you with crimes for the ones that weren't. That's why this matters so much. Now, it adds here, though, a 2005 analysis by the George W. Bush administration's Justice Department determined that the president need not personally perform the physical act of affixing a signature to a bill he approves and decides to sign in order for the bill to become law, meaning there is a ground where the Biden team or somebody could probably legally challenge this, but Trump's saying, hey, do it, and you're getting charged with perjury. And it says, rather, that Office of Legal Counsel assessment found the president may sign a bill within the meaning of Article 1, Section 7 of the Constitution by directing a subordinate to affix the president's signature to such a bill, for example, by Autopen. Meaning, if the president gives permission, authorizes it, even if signed by Autopen, if there is authorization, it is still legal. Trump is saying, maybe, maybe not. But guess what? A lot of them did not have that, and you're going to jail if you try challenging it. Now, it says a House Republican-led investigation this year of the Autopen's use under Biden produced no direct evidence that aides acted without presidential approval, but generated circumstantial evidence that he rarely interacted with many key West Wing officials. Meaning, who knows? Who knows? Now, look, on another topic, remember when the FBI announced that they found documents about the Trump-Russia hoax in burn bags, and they basically said allegedly someone was planning to destroy key evidence in the Trump-Russia hoax? Well, FBI Director Kash Patel just announced they're going to release all those documents. This is what they're saying. They're going to release them. This is Kash Patel speaking with Yanya Kellick of American Thought Leaders. Watch this.
When the United States government and agency heads want things to disappear and want things to be buried and hidden, they know how to do it. But what they didn't count on was President Trump winning, him electing leadership across the United States government to say, Go find out how they corrupted and weaponized law enforcement. And that's what we did. That's what we're doing. That's how we found it. And we're going to continue to expose it. And you're going to see everything we found in that room in one way or another, be it through investigation, public trial, or disclosure to the Congress.
That's a big deal. I would say it's going to be hard for them to release documents if the documents show evidence of crime, unless they bring criminal charges. And so, we'll see where that goes, because the whole Trump-Russia hoax is turning into as we've been seeing with the public statements, at least, not so much criminal charges, but public statements, it does look like the Trump administration is alleging kind of a grand conspiracy that was used to basically try to undermine the 2016 elections and then remove Trump from office as president. And illegally spy on a lot of people. So, we'll see what the documents have and whether this is also accompanied with criminal charges if they do it, because, again, they haven't done it really yet. Meanwhile, though, anybody remember the fact checkers? The Biden administration had agents who were communicating with platforms, and a lot of them have said it. Facebook said it, Meta, of course. Heads of Google talked about it. The former heads of Twitter, now X, talked about it, and others, actually. They had advisory groups that were flagging content and then saying, hey, this is disinformation, this is false information. And while they could not order censorship, many platforms took it as justifiable reason. Hey, I risk being punished if I don't. And they actually censored a lot of people. That is potentially illegal. It's not really being looked at that way yet, but it's been changed at least. The Trump administration is kind of looking into this. And what's interesting is they're kind of also doing something similar, but rather than call for censorship, the Trump administration is actually calling out fake news, and they're just cutting out the middleman. They're not having platforms do it. They're just doing it themselves. Let me show you this. This is the White House website. The White House website now has an official page exposing what they allege is fake news, people spreading false information. It says misleading, biased, exposed. And they have the media offender of the week. Outlets, CBS News, the Boston Globe, the Independent. And they even named the journalists. The White House is naming and shaming journalists for, again, what they allege is fake information. The claim, they say, media misrepresents and exaggerates President Trump's calls for Democrat accountability. Category, misrepresentation, omission of context, suggesting this would be disinformation, not misinformation. That they're taking evidence and falsely framing it and leaving out information to make fake narratives. That's basically what the Trump administration is accusing these media of and these journalists of, by name. The offense, the media misrepresented President Trump's call for members of Congress to be held accountable for inciting sedition by saying that he called for their execution. Trump kind of did suggest that he was calling for execution, by the way, right? Where Trump, of course, basically called out these members of Congress who were calling on American troops to oppose illegal orders without saying what they were, basically sowing distrust within the U.S. military, and then said that that is a sedition and the punishment for sedition is death. Trump was calling for them to be charged and suggesting the law could mean the death penalty, right? But this is what they say. The truth. The Democrats and fake news media subversively implied that President Trump had issued illegal orders to service members, and that is true, actually. He says every order President Trump has issued has been lawful. It is dangerous for sitting members of Congress to incite insubordination in the United States military, and President Trump called for them to be held accountable. And that is a true statement, right? And what Trump is saying here. It says the key points. Democrats released a video calling for service members to disobey their chain of command and, in turn, implied President Trump had issued illegal orders. President Trump has never issued an illegal order. The fake news knew that, but ran with the story anyway. And again, this is debatable because basically you do have all these local judges saying that Trump has illegal orders, and then it goes back and they challenge it and it goes higher up. And typically as it goes, it turns out that the orders are legal, but the blockades they put in place basically stop Trump from doing much. They also have what they call the Offender Hall of Shame. It says a record of the media's false and misleading stories flagged by the White House. Scroll for the truth. The Trump administration has created its own fact checker organization through the White House website. And this is kind of interesting. You might remember Trump actually talked before about having the fakies, right? You have the Emmys. He wanted to have the fakies, and he was planning on having an award ceremony awarding the fake news to recognize how fake they are. That was his first term in office. They've now kind of done that, only they're not giving them awards. They're actually naming and shaming them just openly. The administration has now done this. All right, everyone, that said, questions, comments, anything you want to talk about, leave it in the chat. Let's jump into some questions. And oh man, what a wild time, huh? I hope you all had a great Thanksgiving, by the way. So happy Thanksgiving yet again. First question, Callie CYD, you're saying, I was talking to a good friend how I was brought up with love in the US, and she looked at me like I had a third eye. She was raised in Chicago. Yeah, I know. I mean, it's crazy, actually. I was raised very patriotic. And I mean, a lot of my family is like super, super patriotic. I don't know if I don't think my family would qualify as migrants. I say that I'm a combination of OG American, original American, and conquered peoples. I'm a product of conquest and proof that the savages and these settlers can love each other. So my family is like Hawaiian and Filipino, but most of my Filipino family, they're all in the military, right? They were all Navy. And of course, the Philippines almost became a U.S. state. They actually denied statehood. My family were like the American loyalists who came to America during that time, mostly from Hawaii, because Hawaii had a big program to bring in Filipinos also. And then, of course, Native Hawaiian, which became a state thanks to the Banana Company, which overthrew the government. And so, I'm mixed. I'm mostly white, but I can trace my white family back to the Mayflower. So I'm about as American as you can possibly get. I was raised to absolutely love this country. The idea of not loving America didn't even occur to me for most of my life. It didn't even occur to me as a concept for most of my life. I think that patriotism is a type of love that you carry with you. And I think people devoid of that love are missing out. You know what I mean? Because a love of your country is also a love of your culture, and it's also a love of your people. And if you love your people, you love your country. If you love your culture, you love your country. If you love your values, you love your country. And if you love these things, you're going to carry them forward, and you're going to maintain for future generations what you do love. And I do think that without that kind of love of country, we're going to lose our country. So, I know this is terrible what's happening now, but I do think people coming into this country, spreading hatred of this country, not conforming to this country, it is damaging, actually. I think it is harmful to the United States, and it is deeply unfortunate. HMS Stefan, you're saying, in our earlier American history, our standards and rules for immigration were more conservative. They were. But I will add, Americans were also kind of hostile to some of the migrant populations. Anybody know how they used to treat Irish people? They didn't like them very much. Or how they used to treat Italians? They didn't like them very much, right? So it isn't like a race thing, right? You did have a lot of disagreements even within like what we would consider now like normal migrant populations. I've mentioned it before, but if you want to read something really funny, go and read the early writings of some of the American founding fathers after they formed the American Republic, and basically a system of no taxes and the kind of migrants that were coming in from Europe. They were complaining. There were letters where they're complaining. They're like, these new migrants, like coming from like Western Europe, right? I'm talking like German migrants and British migrants and so on. Like these new migrants, they don't believe in our values. They just don't want to pay taxes. Like literally, that was the argument. That we were bringing in people from Western Europe who did not actually believe in the Constitution or freedom, but they liked the fact they could come here and work and not pay taxes. And that's why they were coming here. And there were a lot of like the early founders of the country who were very mad about that because they were worried that, you know, the underlying thing that really defines the American character is self-reliance and love of freedom. If I were to sum up what defines American values, it's that. Self-reliance and the value of freedom. If you don't support these two things, I wouldn't want you in this country, frankly. And so I think that should be the basis of how you view this. Do you support freedom of belief? Do you support freedom of speech? Do you support the values that allow for the freedom of the individual? And are you self-reliant? If you're coming here and going on welfare, if you're coming here being a drain, if you're coming here because you want someone else to take care of you, that's not a reason to migrate to the United States. Because that's not what we're offering. That's not what we stand for as a nation. Ashley from California, you're saying the groups that hate the U.S., why do they come here? Do they come with the intent to change the U.S., to be more to their liking, or do they have no choice and hate the U.S. the same way some tend to hate their caregivers? I think it's a mixture. I think a culture... I think the culture of migrants will be determined by what you're offering them. So older migration policies basically promised migrants nothing. The only promise we were giving to people fleeing the Soviet Union, the only promise we used to give to people fleeing Cuba, the only promise we used to give to people fleeing religious persecution or whatever else was come here and you will have the freedom of opportunity. This is the land of opportunity. Come here and you can build a life. We're not going to give you anything. We're not going to support you in any way. All we're going to do is make it so you can work, make money, build a life, build a home, and your success or your failure is going to be determined by your hard work or lack thereof. That was all you were offered. And because of that, what type of people do we bring here? We brought in people who wanted to work hard and make a life. Because what they valued was freedom. What they valued was opportunity, because that was what they were denied in the countries they fled from. Some of the most patriotic people I know are people who fled communist countries because I've talked to them and they're like, you Americans don't know how good you have it. If the only criticism I've heard from a lot of those people is you don't value your freedom enough. Some of them love the values of this country more than we do. That's the kind of migrant I want. That is the kind of migrant I want, right? But unfortunately, when you change the game, when you tell people, come here and you can go on welfare, come here, you can have a kid, defraud the American system, get free health care, have 5 kids, go on food stamps, you can live off them and you'll never work again. Come here, you get temporary protection status, you don't have to conform. Come here, you never have to learn English, you never have to work, you never have to follow our culture. Come here, you don't have to respect this country, and we're going to support you anyway. I think those people are taking advantage of this country. I think their intent for coming here is not proper. And I can understand why, frankly, why people would want them deported. I think if that intent is there, it is in opposition to what America is. It is in opposition to our values. It's in opposition to our culture. And I think that when you're promising people that, you're going to bring in migration that is more damaging than harmful. Of course, the other side too is you need to have a cap on it, because if you're going to bring in 20 million people, you need to build 20 million jobs. You need to build 20 million houses or more. Probably more, because you want to have enough competition. And if you're not keeping up on the infrastructure level, you're going to create competition that actually damages the ability of people to function. Not to mention, you also have to fix the school system. If you have a community and you have one school and you double the population through migration, you can't have the school classrooms double in occupancy all of a sudden. Like, you're going to have kids left behind. And so the education system is going to be damaged because of it, which you have happening in a lot of places. Then the schools, they have to offer ESL, English as a second language, to every language of every migrant population. And if you have 5, 10, 20, 30 languages, they have over 100 and 170, I think, in New York. And I don't know how they even keep up with that. They don't have the budget for it. And so you need to create the infrastructure to handle it as well. And if you're not doing that, you're not being responsible to the people here. The people here are then suffering for the sake, out of the goodness of their hearts, for a migrant population, which has been happening a lot in the United States. The quality of life for Americans has been dropping significantly. As I mentioned before, as someone who's very American, I feel like a foreigner in my own country, and I don't recognize my own country, frankly. Virginia Ulikie, you're saying asylum is a great chance for people who are legitimate, but yet it became a loophole for bad people to come, and yes, it needs to be seriously checked. Yeah, I agree. Here's the thing. I believe in asylum. I hope the United States still legitimately looks at asylum cases. Because, America is not just some isolated hermit country. We also represent basically the world government. We do. We are the world police. I know it's a meme. I know people get down on us for it. We are. And I hope we continue to be. Because there are very evil forces in the world who want to absolutely just blanket the world in totalitarian socialism, communism. Without the United States stepping up to the plate and defending human rights, you're going to have genocides and democides and, failed states all over the world, because America is the main force holding that back. And I'll point to the China model and CCP trying to export that just as one of many examples for it. The United States does represent a certain type of world order, the Pax Americana. And I think part of that is supported by us not just defending the basic idea of freedom here, but defending it globally. And part of that is also recognizing, this group of people is being genocided, like Christians in Nigeria, for example, being genocided. I don't want that. And I think this is one of the defining traits of Americans. We are kind people. When I've traveled abroad, I've been shocked to find that not all people think this way. You go to some countries, and even first world countries, they don't think this way. The idea of human rights that does not directly affect them, a lot of them don't care. A lot of them do not care. Human rights for them is a personal thing. And if their personal benefit is better, hey, great. Yeah, there's bad things in the world. It's not their business, and they don't care about it. Americans are different. We actually care about people in other countries. We actually care about people who are different from us. Our young men will go to a country we can't even find on a map, which is a lot of them, and we will fight and die to defend the rights of those people because we care that much. That is what America is. For me, that's part of the American character. That is something I never want to see this world lose. I can tell you, I don't know if I qualify as a young man anymore. I would go to Nigeria and defend the rights of people being genocided to prevent them from being killed. I care about them enough. I don't know them. I've never met them. I care about them enough where I would fight and die to defend them. Because that is who we are as a people. That is who the American people are. My family takes great pride in our military history, fighting, against the Japanese in the Pacific. I had family at Iwo Jima. I had family, in quite a lot there. Family in Europe fighting the Nazis, a lot of them. I had family fighting the Viet Cong. I had family fighting against the Chinese and the North Koreans in the Korean War. We value this. We value it. We tell stories about it. We honor it. We have the medals of our uncles and grandfathers and great-grandfathers. I had family on both sides of the Civil War, dozens of them, or more than a dozen of them on both sides. This is something that the values of this country are things that my family has fought and bled for, and I'd imagine the families of most of you also fought and bled for, and I don't want to see that lost. And so when I hear about things like this, religious persecution, people being genocided, I get mad. I get mad, and I want to go and fight and defend people who are victims of it, because that is who we are as the American people. That's part of our character. And so also, I do like a legitimate, legal system of asylum. I think that is an extension of the American character, saying not only will I defend you, but if you are in deep danger and I don't want to have my son go die in your country to fight for you, I want to bring you here. That is also part of the kindness of the United States. But I also despise people who take advantage of that, frankly, because it damages the entire thing. People who take advantage of the American system of kindness and who game it, who defile it, who rob it, you're damaging that entire. It's like robbing. It's like robbing the confession or robbing the tithing box. It's like you're stealing money from. You're stealing money from the poor. You know what I mean? It's like if you had a person who's risking being killed, and they're getting in line for something, and you just cut in line and take it from them because you want, not because you're in danger, but just because you want to rob somebody or defraud somebody. I think that is such a terrible display of character, and so I don't respect that at all. I think it is an insult to the American people, and it's an insult to all the people who legitimately need the help of the American people as an extension of our kindness. And so I believe in both sides of this. I do hope we maintain a kind and good asylum system. I do hope so, but I do hope we frankly do something about the people defrauding it. Jimmy T, you're saying, since the U.S. was not formed from ethnic identity, rather by ideology outlined in the Declaration of Independence and enshrined by Constitution, which is why it's hard to assimilate unless the intent is there to do so. Yeah, and actually on the point of culture, this is also something that makes America unique. America, from the beginning, has always been a collection of cultures that were very different from each other. We actually are maybe one of the few, maybe the only country on earth that is able to have very unique cultural pockets, different religions, different beliefs, able to live in harmony and to uphold a certain idea that maintains what we are as a nation. Because the American idea is not a culture. It's not really a culture. It is kind of, right? I think there are things that you can have whatever culture you come from and still have this. We have our holidays, we have our values, we have our, the Constitution is kind of the basis of it. Loving America is not abandoning your culture. You can still be, from any culture and still love this country. I grew up with a lot of Hawaiian culture, even though it's not the majority of my race. It's a culture I grew up with, doing hula and luau's every weekend. That was my culture growing up. Surfing. We had a family tradition where even on Christmas Day we'd go surfing before opening presents. That's the culture I come from, right? And of course, a lot of my white family was very football and the whole 9 yards. My grandpa played college football with Joe Gibbs and stuff. It's like NASCAR, right? All American. But my point is, you can have your culture in the United States and still value what we are as a country. And it is true, we've actually had that from the beginning. You had very early, of course, the Native Americans, a lot of them. I know a lot of them. I know I used to be a personal assistant to a Cherokee elder. Gwendale. I actually saw her not too long ago. I have a lot of friends who are Seminoles. A lot of them love this country. I mean, they do, and they value their own culture still, but they love the United States. They love the Constitution. They love what we stand for. They don't hate it at all, and they've been here longer than we have, right? America has been able to bring in migrant populations who establish their own communities. Little Italy, Chinatown, who are still able to integrate and able to love this country despite having their own migrant pockets. And so America, I think, is one of the few countries that has been able to achieve this. But I do think what defines us, again, love of freedom, and an independent character. These are what define us as a nation. All right, everyone, let me know what you think. Do you agree with me, disagree with me? Do you think there's something else that defines America? Let me know in the comments. In the meantime, thank you so much for being here. I will see you again tomorrow, 10:30 a.m. Eastern Time. Happy Monday to you all. Hope you had a great weekend and a great Thanksgiving. Join me again tomorrow, 10:30 a.m. Eastern Time. And always, thank you so much for being here. Please take care of yourselves, stay informed, and stay free. Thank you.